Do it again. Somebody with me. Yeah.
All right, so we've talked a little bit so far today about how warfare looks a little bit different by the time we get to Spotsylvania. Some of that is Grant's new strategy in terms of keeping constant pressure on all points in the Confederacy, keeping constant pressure on Lee's army, his idea that even though he doesn't win the Battle of the Wilderness, he keeps moving. But we're also going to see some innovations here at Spotsylvania. And from this point on, I'm going to say that's really what characterizes the change here at Spotsylvania. If you look behind you, some of you might have heard me mention we have 14.9 miles of earthworks here at Spotsylvania. The change that comes from this constant contact is that anytime the soldiers stop, they're going to start throwing up these earthworks in front of them. They realize that every inch of dirt in front of them, dirt and logs, is another inch of them that's saved. So these will stack up to about shoulder height, and then they'll top them off with a thick log called a head log, which means they can fire in that little slot between the earth and logs and the head log. And you'll see not only have they lined our path, but they are going to be one of the most defining characteristics, especially as we talk about the Confederate muleshoe salient. So digging in is just a part of daily life now for these men, whereas a year ago, they might have dug in if they knew they were holding a position for a couple days, or they really wanted to have a stronger defensive line. Here they're going to do it no matter where they stop, and they're going to get creative about it. But that causes a bit of a challenge. If you think about lining your men up, in a traditional attack, it's going to be shoulder to shoulder. And they're going to stretch out in a nice long line and sweep forward with the idea that they will, sorry for anyone I just sprayed there, sweep forward with the idea that they will concentrate their firepower on a certain point and that pressure will edge their enemy back. But if you line up shoulder to shoulder and attack an enemy that's dug in earthworks, are you going to be able to make any kind of an impression? Not really. These men who are behind defensive works are going to have a clear shot at you as you move across any open field, and they're going to be able to cut you down. And so a traditional line of battle, what these fellows have been using for generations, is no longer going to work. And officers and men begin to notice it. And within the 6th Corps, the Union Army, which is the section of the line that we're along right now, they start to have some conversations about this. One of the officers who thinks that maybe the style of fighting right now is a little bit outdated is Emory Upton. But he's not alone. There's actually several other officers in the 6th Corps who are having these kind of conversations. And so by May 10th at Spotsylvania, our last action, remember we've been talking about, is May 8th. 2 days later, they're going to formulate an attack, a different kind of attack against the salient. They see an opportunity to break through the lines in a style of fighting that's not brand new. It's actually been used for time out of mind by armies, but it's different for what the Civil War style of fighting has been to this point. The man who suggests the attack is 24-year-old Emory Upton. You might have seen his picture up on the sign back there. He looks fairly intimidating, actually, especially for a 24-year-old. He's an 1861 graduate of West Point, so he's fresh out of school when the Civil War starts, and he rises through the ranks pretty quickly. But it's his superiors that actually plan the attack here, and they plan a bayonet charge. The idea being that if you can close the distance from your line to that earthwork line quickly with a charge, you'll be able to break through. If you stop to fire in a long line of battle with your men all exposed, you won't be able to close that distance. So they're talking about a different kind of fighting here. It is based on past experiences. You saw some success, in a bayonet charge with Andrew Humphreys at the Battle of Fredericksburg. With the 6th Corps, these same men, in the Battle of Rappahannock Station, a very small engagement, under cover of darkness. And you can also just see the efficiency of an attack like this. The idea being to punch through the lines and then exploit instead of slowly advancing. It makes a lot of sense. So they plan this attack in column, and because they've had success with it before, they're pretty hopeful. But as they're planning this attack, they also know they need to do it with men who will follow their orders. Because what's your impulse when someone's shooting at you?
Run.
Okay, so either run or fight or flight, right? You're either going to run away or you want to fight back. And this charge doesn't allow you to do either of those. You just have to keep running. Because if you stop to fire, you're going to upset the entire plan. And if you run away, well, in any battle, you're upsetting the entire plan. So these guys need to be they need to be veteran soldiers, they need to be capable soldiers. So they handpick the regiments who will be involved in this attack. And they hand it to Emery Upton from that point on. He's a soldier who's been a little late in getting the promotion that he certainly deserves, and his officers think he's got the audacity to lead this command, and they hope that he'll be able to come back with the promotion that he has been owed for a while. So the lieutenant colonel on the staff of the 6th Corps, Lieutenant Colonel Martin McMahon, says, "Upton, what do you think of that for a command?" when he hands him the list of regiments. And Upton says the units were splendid. They're the best men in the Army. Not just the 6th Corps, the best men in the Army. You've got 12 regiments being pulled together. You've got some men from Maine, from Wisconsin, several Pennsylvanians, New Yorkers, the Vermonters. Those of you who know the Vermonters fighting at the Battle of the Wilderness, he's going to pull some of them right back in. And again, some New Yorkers. You actually also have some men from Maine, the 7th Maine, who are chosen. They're handpicked for this honor. And they ask to please be excused. We've had enough of these kind of honors. And they are substituted. But they choose this plan carefully, not just in the theory of punching through the lines and the regiments that they choose, but also in terms of picking their point of attack. If you take a look at your maps, you'll see that we're at tour stop number 2, called Upton's Road. And the trail that we're about to follow is going to take us directly to a place called Doles's Salient. Now you might be thinking, well, gosh, Beth, you've already told us about one salient. How many times can you use that word? Well, the Muleshoe Salient is one big bulge in the Confederate lines, right? Doles's Salient is a small bulge on the bigger bulge of the Muleshoe Salient. You already said that the salient, the big one, is vulnerable to attack. What do you think about a salient on top of a salient? It's going to be one of the weakest points on the line, in the Confederate line. So it's chosen as the attack point here. There's also other things working in its favor. They need as much cover as possible. If you're doing a bayonet charge, you don't want to receive fire until you're very, very close to the lines. You see that we're entering a section of woods. These woods would have been here, or were here, in 1864. They provided cover for Upton's attack as they move along an old woods road. So these men also have a guideline. They can follow a road through the woods that will point them in very close distance to their point of attack. It's really perfectly planned out attack. And the thought is, if this doesn't work, we don't know what will. So they put this together, they hand it to Upton, and they essentially tell him that he's expected to return a brigadier general. He's just a colonel. He will return a brigadier general if successful, and if not, he's not expected to return. High stakes, right? Usually you don't hear officers giving with your shield or on it commands during the Civil War. But part of this is appealing to Upton's personality. He's a rising star in the Army. He's very ambitious. He wants that promotion. He's actually been writing to his sister for a long time about how much he deserves that promotion because he's been commanding a brigade, and he should be a general, but he's not. So part of this is because the attack should succeed, and part of it is to motivate Upton. This is his big chance. And his response to McMahon is, he says, "Mac, I'll carry those works." And so he lines his men up in 4 lines, stacks them one behind the other. The idea being an attack in depth. They choose the point of attack, they organize carefully, and they plan this out, I would say, pretty perfectly. We'll talk about the orders for each line once we get to the point of attack, but I want to remind us of just what makes this attack so successful. You've got the rapid advance bayonet charge, you've got the compact formation, which means they're not as much of a target like a long line would be. And then once a breakthrough is achieved, once they punch through the lines, they can spread out and act individually as units. They can break through and move in different directions. It's a much more flexible attack than your traditional line of battle. So you see people here, the engineers and the greater minds in the 6th Corps, actually working to change warfare. A lot of times we talk about changing warfare, and it always gets on my nerves because we talk about it like it's this big wheel that just grinds on its own to change the way that we fight wars. It's actually people coming up with ideas, and a lot of times it's ideas designed to save people's lives. And that's exactly what we see here with Upton's attack. These are men who are trying to find a way to end the war faster and to get less and less of their men killed if they possibly can. They know the first ranks will take heavy fire because everyone's going to be focusing on them. But once the line is penetrated, they should be much more successful than any other kind of attack here. So with that, the orders go out to have all of their men fix bayonets. Interestingly, for the men in the later ranks, all the men are supposed to load their weapons, but they are not supposed to finish loading. So the last thing that you do when you're loading your black powder weapon, once you've put the round in, is to cap it, to put a percussion cap on top. And that's what will actually cause the round to ignite and to fire. Only the first line is allowed to cap their guns. That means that way nobody else can fire. You're not risking somebody stopping to fire along the way. They really mean this to be a bayonet charge. You're not allowed to stop or fire for the wounded, and there's to be no cheering. You're not going to give away the plan of attack and the route of attack before we actually get there. Officers, while they have their own specific plans, which I'll talk about at our next stop, they're to repeat one order only as we go along. That's the word forward, 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 so that these men get one idea. They've got their bayonets fixed, and they're going to keep moving forward. No stopping to fire, no stopping for the wounded, no stopping for any cause. Because it's only if they can achieve breakthrough that this will be any success at all. So with all that in mind, let's head on down the road.